It is testing time again in the knife lab, which of course is just my house, and by lab I mean place that I cut rope. Not in a scientific sense. Well, in a bro scientific sense. You know, science bro. We are testing today CPM 3V. We have a Survive knife here with a Peters heat treated CPM 3V. What the Rockwell is, I don't know right now. Someone will know. You know how? Because it's a Survive knife. And someone will tell me. Because I made a few nomenclature mistakes that rendered my review unwatchable to Survive fans in the review of this knife. I think I called the micarta the wrong finish and the blade steel the wrong finish. I used the words rough and I think I used the words coated or finished. I'm the worst. But yeah, it's a 3V knife and this is a really nice knife. Despite, you know, the probably valid, you know, issues people have with ordering one and not getting them for years and years or whatever. But apart from that, the knives are good, that is for sure. So I've already tested this knife a little bit. You can watch my previous video review of this knife if you can stand the misnomers, of course. I think I even said it stands for Guy Seaford Ordnance when it stands for something so different, GSO. What else? I'm not bitter.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine. When you're
So yeah, what we're gonna do, well, I've polished the edge. We're gonna see how long it lasts with a polished KME edge, up to 160,000 grit or 0.10 microns. I use that system, the KME system. And then we're gonna compare it to a coarse edge with the exact same angle, which is 17 degrees by my measurements using the Tormek angle cube. And we're going to see if the 600 grit finish lasts as long, longer than, less long than the polished finish when cutting twisted sisal rope. So twisted sisal rope is my chosen cutting medium because it's a nice abrasive type stuff. It's definitely not easy to get through for a dull knife. And I feel that if I cut this stuff until the knife no longer cuts held paper, then it will be a good measure of when the absolute sharpness is lost. So that is the test. You've all seen these before. You can watch my FAQ if you need more answers, both, you know, to the silly questions and the reasonable ones, and the silly statements and the reasonable ones. So check that out. I'll link it in a card up above. Until then, let's get going cutting some rope, shall we? Shiny first. Let's do this. Well, it's 290 cuts for mirror polished, 240 cuts for coarse. Is that, you know, this is not a completely scientific test, of course. Is a 50 cut difference enough to call a difference? Well, I think it's getting there. It's definitely on the borderline of saying, you know, generally, in a general sense, your edge might last a bit longer with a polished finish on 3V. Interesting to compare it to S30V. Now, I'm going to bring out one of these frankly pornographic steel comparison charts, or if you're anything like me, they're pornographic. And we're going to look at S30V versus 3V. So, people seem to think that 3V is a better steel than S30V. Well, it may be in terms of toughness, but in terms of edge retention, it's not likely to be, because it actually has less stuff in it that's going to make a fine edge, or a coarse edge, or any sort of really long-lasting edge. doesn't have bad stuff in it, of course. It's still got the vanadium, still got the carbon, the chromium, all that sort of cool stuff. But, and the silicon and molybdenum, of course, can't forget those guys. But it's actually got less vanadium, just a little less. It's like about half the carbon of S30V. It's got half the chromium of S30V. You know, it's not, you know, and it's that half carbon that's probably going to do a fair bit of the job, and you know, it's got about maybe 4/5 of the vanadium, just from looking at this graph. So yeah, it's not as, you know, geared towards edge retention as S30V, so the fact that it even competes is pretty special, I think, anyway. So that's competing with Benchmade's S30V in the more recent test, I guess you could look at it, which did 330 cuts with a polished edge, and I can't remember, you'll have to check that video out. Less with the coarse edge at 16 degrees, at any rate. So it's definitely comparable, which makes it, you know, still an impressive steel. I would suggest there is other reasons you would want a polished edge on a knife such as this, and generally in a steel such as this, as is not generally a folding knife steel. Anecdotal evidence from folks who enjoy the pursuit of wood crafting, that is, using a knife to alter the shape and structure of bits of wood to make devices for use by human hands and human bodies. Advocates of that pursuit seem to prefer a polished edge. Maybe that means it's better for cleaner feathers or cleaner cuts or cleaner chiseling or whatever they're doing with their knives. That's not something I can test, nor is it something that I have the skill to test. I am not a wood crafter or a bush crafter, and I wouldn't be able to, I can't really foresee of a repeatable test in any sense against wood, because wood is such a highly variable material. Even the sort of factory produced pine sheets are all just so different. At any rate, not something I can really test, but definitely something to note as well. I would say, you know, in a fairly reasonably committal way, that 3V would probably benefit from a mirror polished edge if you have the capacity to do so, both for edge retention and for ease of carving and crafting. And that's just from my, you know, friends in the bushcraft community. But if you do not have the facility to put such an edge on your knife, it will still hold a very fine edge with 600 grit, which I think most sharpening kits or sharpeners have the capacity to put on. So there's good news for everyone here, for sure. 240 cuts through rope is really no slouch for a fixed blade knife that is probably not going to be made to cut coarse materials. So there you go. Hope you've enjoyed this test here. I have taken note of the feedback I asked for last time. I'm likely going to continue with the sort of slightly separate music focused tests, but I'm going to try and be a little bit more entertaining. We'll see how we go. So thank you all for that. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.